Hello and welcome back, everyone. Happy Wednesday on a Tuesday. Today we are going to be going over Tinto Talks number 56, which details, it's the third out of four Tinto Talks, which are detailing updates that have been made to the game as a result of feedback that have been given in previous Tinto Talks, where we are going to today be covering diplomacy and warfare. Feeling a little under the weather, so expect a little bit of coughing. I apologize for that, but let's get into it. Hello and welcome. Notice the welcome is capitalized. So obviously this is a coded hidden message, and it's really not about the welcome. We can forget the old come, and instead this is about Wednesday, because it's a happy Wednesday on a Tuesday, where we give information about our super top big secret game with codename Project Caesar. Everyone knows this is in fact Project Teaser, or if you pronounce it correctly, Project Tizar. Some people think it's EU5, but silliness, so that you can give us feedback. Of course, if you are interested in giving feedback, you can do so on the forums. Today we will talk about some of the changes to diplomacy and warfare mechanics we have done since we started doing these Tinto Talks, of course. Here we have diplomatic expenses, which this is a feature that I really like, that there is scaling rather than having a certain number of diplomatic relations you have. It scales with the size of the person you have a relationship with. As many of you have seen in some previous Tinto Talks, we added another expense to the economy to give more control to the player. The cost for diplomatic expense is based on the tax base of your country, and the more you spend, the greater benefits your diplomat corps gets. And so you can decide to use really... it's very nice. So to come into think of things through like the lens of Victoria 3, because a lot of you guys are thinking from Victoria 3, there's really only a couple things you can spend money on, right? Money as a resource is generally dedicated to construction. You can also use it to some extent on research by building universities, but eventually you kind of cap out there. And you can also add military. Here, we have the opportunity to spend more money in order to get more Diplo, and so the decision-making process, it becomes much more, there's more depth added the more different ways you can spend resources in more choices you have, and so maybe for some countries making a lot of diplomatic spending will make sense, like with someone like France, and with other countries maybe it doesn't make that much sense because you are largely operating from your own sort of country. If you play France, you may have this maximized, but you may not if you have a smaller country without subjects, unless you want to be able to maintain an alliance with a bigger and stronger country. And so there is a trade-off where, obviously if you're spending more on Diplo spending, you'll have less construction, you'll have less economic sort of growth. And so this is a trade-off that you will experience as it relates to spending. But continuing on, we have antagonism. In older grand strategy games we made, we had this concept called Bad Boy. Man, it's been forever since it's been called Bad Boy. Bad Boys, okay. Which impacted how badly you behaved, and other countries would treat you more harshly according to it. This evolved into AE, systems we used in EU4, and Imperator, which had direct impact on opinion and allowed coalitions to be formed. While these were useful systems, they were a bit limited. A global variable in your country, it was too broad, and a merely opinion impacts, it was rather hidden and hard to get overviews. And not sure I fully understand. And as merely opinion impacts, it was rather hidden and hard to get overviews. I'm not sure exactly what he's saying, but to some extent, yeah, having a global, bad boy or infamy score is not particularly nuanced. And so we have something a little bit different, which is antagonism here in Project Tizar. In Project Tizar, we developed this new system called biases, which has static impact and temporary values that change over time. Like opinions work in most of our games. We had this for opinions and trust, and when we were not happy with AE, and neither were you, we decided to scrap AE and instead make a new bias, which we will call antagonism. So someone with whom you don't have as much, in common with, it may be a lot easier for them to join a coalition because you have a higher antagonism score. Antagonism indicates how other countries are likely to view us. If they feel a lot of antagonism towards us, the countries that consider us as irrelevant to their interests will be less inclined to engage in diplomacy and may act against our interests. Antagonism is caused by basic differences between the country's societal values. So if you go for very early, like humanism, back when everyone is, more religiously oriented or something like this, or if you go for, what is it, like a market economy type thing, when everyone has a traditional economy, different social values, this is a cost that you pay as you're going to increase antagonism. Government types, religion, culture, and language and actions can cause an antagonism bomb in a location that affects the countries near it to varying degrees, depending on how much they care about the location, about the antagonistic country. Antagonism bomb effects will generally dissipate over time. Antagonism also affects the country's opinion of you. And so the bomb, in actions, an example I'm assuming is like invading a neighboring country, will cause other countries around that area to have a lot more antagonism towards you. Of course, the country needs to have a certain amount of antagonism against you before you can join a coalition. The overall effect of this is that you can get away with fewer antagonism bomb effects against countries that have a baseline antagonism towards you before they start thinking about forming coalitions against you, and countries that are more similar to you will probably allow a bit more to slide. And so, we will have... I think that this will decrease perhaps because with AE, in EU4, you used to juggle going after different religions, and they really wouldn't care if you annex the other religion, and I feel like this bomb will decrease that to some extent, but okay. Antagonism the Ottomans feel towards us, definitely not someone you want to upset. Towards Byzantium, the truth hurts. We have foreign culture, +4, foreign language family +5, different religious group +4, same government type -1, and differing societal values from Byzantium for a total of +12. And then once we get to a certain threshold, I don't know what the threshold is, it might be 50, it might be 25, this type of thing, they can join a coalition against us. We have independence movements as well. Trying to become independent as a subject is usually a tough life, the truth hurts. In some previous grand strategy games, you could ask another country to support your independence, and they could help you in a war. This is generally, as I recall, in EU4 long ago, this was the strategy, just get France to ally you and have them beat up your overlord for you. To make this better, we took inspiration from Crusader Kings, where subjects usually band together to fight for independence. As we have an organization, the International Organization Code, we have made a new type of it called independence movements. Any subject with loyalty below 50% can start such a movement, and any subject can join it. This sounds good, especially because, I think in games it is often too easy to get too many subjects and vassal swarm and this type of thing. And this mechanic seems like it would undermine it. Other countries can be invited as well, and the goal to get war is get independence for all subjects. Here we have the Flemish independence movement that we're taking a look at. Members will join offensive wars if declared against the overlord, and it's just Flanders in here. Probably need some more members, yeah, probably. Here we have civil war surrenders, which civil wars are kind of a difficult thing to balance in games because you don't want to create incentives for intentionally losing a civil war, and here we have a system that will allow early surrenders if you're hopelessly lost but come with a bit of a penalty. Sometimes you're in a civil war and you're about to lose and it's just a matter of time. We added an action to allow surrender in a civil war when the other side is more than twice the size of the other. As some of you pointed out, losing a civil war as soon as possible to avoid it, or may or may not be an exploit. Yep. So currently there are some penalties to jumping to the new country. So if you intentionally lose the civil war, you'll get -50 stability, -50 prestige, -50 legitimacy. It seems like a pretty substantive cost to be paying to intentionally lose it, but maybe it's worth it in some cases. Coming up next is naval combat. During testing, we discovered that with all types of ships having the same frontage, made it so that you wanted to stack almost purely the biggest ships and the rest were not really useful. Don't want that. So instead, we now have different frontages, so the categories have different roles. Heavy ships have a frontage of 2 and a combat speed of 0.5. Galleys have 0.5 frontage, but their combat speed is 1. Forget what combat speed refers to. It might be that they can engage faster or something like this. Light ships have a higher initiative and combat speed and have a frontage of 1. Maybe it's initiative that allows you to engage faster. And so you can start dealing damage both in morale and in terms of ships a little bit faster, and then the heavies get in there and start to make work happen. This is, naval combat going to be excited for taking a look at that when the game comes out. New objectives. When we talked about military objectives, there was a request to add automated rebel suppression. This was something we definitely added in. We now have added hunt navies that works like the hunt armies and tries to engage and destroy enemy navies in the designated areas. Fantastic. This is really going to allow... I do like these systems a lot to allow you to decrease the level of micro required for military. It's going to depend on how good the AI can fight in this type of thing. But it's... Specifically, you might... Yeah, for the things where you don't need the AI to perform that well because they're just kind of clearing out riffraff, it doesn't really matter that the AI wouldn't be that necessarily as good as a player. Something that is really hard to design AI to care about is fog of war, and there is fog of war in this game, so that is just something to consider, because what we saw from the terrain stuff is that there would be fog of war, like with forests and hills and this type of stuff, and so that is going to be a bit of a vibe. We're also looking to adding more objectives, like defending the coast or focus sieges, and we'll tell you when more are implemented. We have logistic improvements, which this is probably the feature in here that I'm the most excited about. While we were happy with having a logistics system in the game and food where it mattered, it was a little bit limited in that you could only trace supply 2 locations away at most. This is not really how supply worked, and generally supply would be in long lines. So we introduced a concept called logistics distance, and now every single army traces a path to the closest valid supply source. The length can be traced and extended throughout advances in several of the later ages. A valid supply source is a supply depot, a port with or proper sea zone with a navy carrying food that will distribute it to you, or a province capital that is under your control, country giving you access to food and actually has food. The ability to cut off supply lines as a mechanic is so important in war, and often is underrepresented in terms of war games, where you can, invite the enemy in, have them penetrate deeply into your territory, just so you can cut their supply line so that you can prevent them from, or not have to engage with a much larger force, something to this effect. And so what you create is a sort of dynamic where you're both pushing the line forward and jockeying for position to ensure that the supply line is safe. Supply paths, and maybe you use the automated stuff, or like an automated military that destroys armies, or something like this. In terms of military objectives, small automated armies to prevent one stacks from cutting your supply line, something like this. A valid supply source is a supply depot or port, etc., etc. Supply paths can only be traced through friendly controlled territory, but not through any location that belongs to the zone of control of a hostile fort. So, you can very quickly lose supply, even if a one stack decides to, kind of siege down some of the territory, and prevent the access from going through. Here we can see a supply line. We also made it so that armies can only carry a single month's supply of food with them, except for auxiliary units. And so I'm also pretty excited about the fact that auxiliary units are probably going to change dynamics. So if you are advancing into a territory like Russia, which has a vast open area, which is probably more vulnerable to getting your supply line cut, you would want to have a composition of an army that is more auxiliary heavy than if you were, like, let's say, France advancing into Belgium, where that's much less of a concern. Which can carry several months for several regiments each. This means that even if you march deep into unprotected territory or have the ability to ignore the zone of control for ports, you need to get a supply path to the source so that you can get food from them. And expecting to see it be cataclysmic when you run out of food, people start dying very quickly, this type of thing. And so I think that generally speaking, warfare should revolve a lot more around supply in these games than actual pitched battles. Pitched battles are kind of sexy, but the truth of the matter is warfare, I was about to say warfare in this era, but really warfare in every era is very, very dependent on just logistics and ability to move stuff. And get stuff to the right, places, this type of thing. Of course, you can always see the path your armies trace supply from when selected an army as a green arrow that the supply source to the army. And so it'll be exciting to see what strategies you kind of use to defend your supply line. And I think that the AI will probably be pretty bad at attacking supply lines, but I expect that players, there will be much more of a jockeying, song, and dance, especially if you have the smaller army, to give up territory and then try and cut supply lines as a means of combating someone who has the bigger army. If they have a bigger army, you don't want to fight a pitched battle, and so instead you go to avoiding them, and so it's very... I'm excited to see how warfare plays out, especially in multiplayer. Here I walked past the Lithuanian armies. I used remove fog of war cheat code as they would have been hidden from otherwise. And this is kind of what we're getting at a little bit. We can hide armies, not in the normal advanced spot, and just wait in the wings with small armies and just have them cut supply lines in a general as a general heuristic. And so I think having a lot of flanking armies and mobility-oriented armies is maybe going to be a thing as well, which would definitely make sense. And information is going to be much more valuable, because if you don't know these armies are here and you advance in like this, you're going to get your supply line cut. And tracing supplies from Goriades, and they will easily be able to cut my supplies by moving into Lipsk. This is a paper map mode where everything is icons on the map. Yes, it is a paper map mode. Okay, so it is a paper map mode. But this is I think kind of just like a very critical and interesting thing to look at here, is that this 236 stack can really mess up this stack. You deny the food, and then they have to come back, or they have to starve to death, so they have to come back and this type of stuff, and it becomes much more about maneuver than just brute strength, I think. And if there are units that move a lot faster on the map, creating armies out of these in order to try and flank and move around is going to be perhaps a thing that you do. Monthly attrition losses. This is a nice little information one. One thing that was requested by you guys was the ability to see how much attrition a unit has taken recently, so we added some history to it so that you can see how many died in the last year. We're dying from the black lung pop. The truth hurts. Currently, we're taking 6% attrition each month. The unit weight and supply limit attrition before modifiers, normal winter, lack of food. And that is very significant. Losing 5% of your unit each month, or this type of thing, from lack of food, means that you can only take a few months of this before you start really, or, well, technically it's decreasing each time as well, so you'll never, it's not like 20 months and you run out of troops, but this is a very significant amount of troops to lose, units to lose, and this type of thing. Recruit army general. Another worry that was pointed out by the community was the potential lack of generals or armies for your units. So we added 2 new actions where you can recruit either a general or an admiral for your country for gold. This price is based on the economy of the country, but price is reduced by the military ability of the ruler. Really like that the price is reduced by the military ability of the ruler, which, allows you to be more militarily oriented. And of course, again, this is another axis upon which you're paying gold, and gold can be used in a ton of different ways. The abilities of using the new commander depend on the army or navy tradition, which is also reduced a bit by recruiting the new commander. Next week, we'll go through a mixed collection of all the other major changes we've done, just like a little bit of a grab bag. Very excited to see it, and also very excited to see what they start rolling out after this, because we've covered all the mechanics, we've covered the updates to the mechanics, and so that leaves a rather big question mark as to what's next. We'll be here tomorrow for that Happy Wednesday, but the following week, we can only speculate as to like what type of news we will get, and hopefully it's a bit interesting. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe. And other than that, have a happy Wednesday. Of course, properly capitalized, because it's a proper holiday.